Consciousness. The word alone feels slippery. You try to hold it and it slides away, as if refusing to be seen by the very thing that's trying to see it. Sometimes I think of it as a trick the universe played on itself. It wanted to observe, so it created something that could say, I. But now that I is standing in the middle of everything, wondering what on earth it actually is. I've always found it strange that we can study galaxies, black holes, quantum fields, yet the one thing we directly experience, the light through which we see all else, remains the most elusive. If I lose my memory, am I still me? If I lose my senses, am I still conscious? What is it that stays when everything else can go? When I close my eyes and try to find consciousness, I expect to bump into something solid, a presence, a hum, a glow, but nothing is there. It's not an object among others, it's the stage on which everything else appears. Thoughts, sounds, sensations, all come and go, yet something quietly watches. It's so obvious we forget it's there, like a screen that never appears in the movie it's showing. And the strangest part? It's the only thing I can't doubt. I can doubt the world, physics, even my memories, but not the fact that I'm aware of doubting. Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" was probably born from that same corner of realization. There's awareness here, undeniable and prior to any explanation. But that's where the discomfort begins. If consciousness is the one undeniable thing, how can we study it using the very thing we're trying to study? It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The tool and the target are the same. Science was built to observe objects, but consciousness isn't an object. It's what makes object and observation possible in the first place. So maybe that's why every theory about it feels incomplete. Because whatever map we draw, the paper itself, the awareness on which the map is drawn, keeps being mistaken for empty space. I sometimes wonder if the question, what is consciousness, is backwards. Maybe it's not something to be found inside the universe, but something the universe is happening inside of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, all I can honestly say is this. I don't know what consciousness is, but I can't escape it. And that makes it the most intimate mystery there is. Section 2. What we think we know. We usually start from what feels safe. Neurons, synapses, electrical pulses. The brain is a galaxy of firing cells, and somehow those sparks make us see sunsets, feel heartbreak, compose symphonies. At least, that's the story we tell ourselves. Neuroscience has mapped regions that light up when we fall in love, fear death, or taste chocolate. It's comforting, isn't it? It feels like progress, as if with enough resolution, we'll finally spot the consciousness neuron glowing in the dark. But deep down, that explanation always feels like standing outside a concert hall and claiming you understand the music because you can see which lights flash on the console. Yes, every thought has a neural footprint, but when you describe that footprint in all its detail, membrane potentials, sodium channels, neurotransmitter gradients, where in that cascade is the feeling of being alive? The redness of red, the ache of loss. We keep describing the structure of the storm and calling it the rain. This is what philosophers like David Chalmers call the hard problem. Not the mechanics of perception, we're good at those, but why any of it feels like something. You can imagine a robot that recognizes faces and solves equations, yet has no inner movie playing. Everything works, but there's no one home. Reductionism insists it's just complexity, that if you connect enough circuits, consciousness emerges. But emergence is a convenient word when we don't know the bridge. It's like saying, and then a miracle occurs. Complexity explains behavior, not experience. Sometimes I think we keep postponing the question by zooming in. We started at organs, then cells, then molecules, and we keep slicing thinner, hoping the last slice will whisper, I am aware. But maybe awareness isn't in the slice at all. Maybe it's in the act of slicing, in the relation between observer and observed. Still, we can't dismiss what we've learned. The brain is no illusion. Damage it and the light of consciousness dims or flickers. But the dependence doesn't prove identity. The violin is needed for the sound, but the sound isn't the violin. So yes, the neuroscience is real, but it's describing the instrument, not the music. And the question that keeps echoing in me is, what's playing the notes? Section 3. The illusion hypothesis. At some point, every thinker seems to flirt with the idea that consciousness itself might be a trick, an afterimage painted by the brain once the real work is already done. The argument goes like this: we aren't truly experiencing our thoughts, we're merely reporting them after the fact. The feeling of being someone in here is just another computational summary, like a status screen telling the system it's running fine. I remember reading that idea for the first time and feeling a strange mixture of fascination and offence. Part of me whispered, "Of course, what else could it be?" The other part flared up, "But I'm right here, reading this sentence." Dennett calls consciousness a user illusion, the way a computer hides its code behind friendly icons. The self, then, is a virtual interface, convenient, clean, and utterly fake. And yet, even an illusion must appear to someone. A hallucination still requires a witness. If consciousness is a hallucination, who or what is hallucinating it? It's easy to declare the self is an illusion, but the declaration itself comes from the very self being denied. It's like a dream character announcing, "I do not exist," while the dream continues around him. He's right in principle, wrong in experience. When I try to live as if this theory were true, something feels missing. I still feel the warmth of sunlight on my hand, the slow unfolding of a thought, the quiet gravity of sadness. They don't seem like bugs in the code, they are the code from my side of the screen. Maybe that's what Hofstadter meant by a strange loop, a system that turns back on itself and, in doing so, creates the illusion of an I. But the illusion doesn't vanish once I see the loop. If anything, seeing it deepens the mystery. How can matter arrange itself in such a way that the universe gains a first-person view of itself? So perhaps calling consciousness an illusion misses the point. Illusions are about something. They distort an underlying reality. But what if consciousness is what reality looks like from the inside? What if illusion and real only exist because awareness is drawing that line between them? And if that's the case, then trying to expose consciousness as an illusion is like the eye trying to roll far enough to see itself. It can twist, strain, invert, but it will never catch itself directly. It only ever finds another reflection. Section 4. The Mirror Room Thought Experiment. Let's imagine a thought experiment. You wake up in a room where every surface is a mirror. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, everything reflects you. There's no beginning, no end, only an endless multiplication of your image stretching into forever. You lift your hand and an infinite number of you do the same. You blink and a universe of eyelids closes with you. At first, it's disorienting. You can't tell which reflection is the real you, so you start watching carefully. One of them smiles a fraction of a second later. You focus on that one, convinced it must be the reflection. But as soon as you think that, you realize the delay was in your perception, not the mirrors. And then it hits you. Maybe there's no real one at all. Maybe each reflection is as real as the others, and what you call I is just the mirror's way of describing itself. Now replace those mirrors with thoughts. Every memory, emotion, or belief is another reflection, an image of yourself that you look at and call me. When you recall who you are, you're really looking at one of those mirrors. The self isn't the reflections, it's the space that allows them. But here's the twist. Even that space isn't something you can step outside of to observe. Consciousness is the invisible room where all reflections appear, but when you try to find its walls, you discover there aren't any. The more you look, the more it feels like the looking itself is what you were searching for. That's when the whole thing starts to loop. You ask, "What am I?" And the question echoes through infinite reflections, each returning a slightly altered version. Who's asking? What's asking? What does it mean to ask? The mind turns into a hall of mirrors folding back on itself. At first, this feels maddening, like chasing your own shadow. But after a while, the panic softens. You start to notice something quiet beneath the reflections. Stillness. Awareness without commentary. You realize that even if every image vanished, the capacity to notice would remain. It's been there all along, hidden behind the noise of mirrors. Maybe that's what consciousness is, not a thing, but a clearing, the open space in which experience arises and subsides. The mirror room isn't there to show you yourself, it's there to reveal that what you call yourself has never been separate from the room. And the funny thing? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every thought, every emotion becomes another reflection to watch, some bright, some distorted, but all shimmering on the same silent surface. The surface that, until now, you'd mistaken for you. Section 5. Consciousness and Time. Time has always felt like the backdrop of everything, the silent current carrying thoughts, events, and lives downstream. But when I sit still and just watch experience, something strange happens. Time seems to fold. The past is only a memory happening now. The future is only an expectation happening now. And the present keeps dissolving before I can hold it. It's as if consciousness isn't moving through time. Time is moving through consciousness. When I say a minute passed, what do I really mean? My mind compared two perceptions, one of a clock before, one after. The movement of the hands became the movement of myself. But in between those two moments, where was I? There's no before or after in the raw field of awareness, only the unfolding of sensations and thoughts, stitched together by memory to create the illusion of continuity. Einstein showed that time isn't absolute. It bends, slows, stretches with speed and gravity. Maybe consciousness does the same thing internally. When I'm in danger, a second feels eternal. When I'm lost in creation, hours vanish. The clock on the wall never changes, but my experience of time does, because what I call time is really the rhythm of consciousness itself. Phenomenologists like Husserl tried to capture this. Consciousness doesn't live in time, it constitutes it. We don't perceive discrete moments like frames in a film. We perceive continuity itself, the smooth flow that gives moments meaning. Without consciousness, time would be like a movie reel with no projector, silent frames waiting for light. Sometimes I imagine time as a violin string and consciousness as the bow. Without the bow's movement, the string is silent. Without the string's tension, the bow has nothing to play. Together, they create the music we call the passage of time. And that makes me wonder, maybe time doesn't pass at all. Maybe it's our awareness that vibrates, oscillating between perceptions, giving rise to the sense of flow. We mistake the flicker of attention for the movement of the universe. In that sense, the arrow of time is not something the universe enforces, but something consciousness paints. The memory of what was, the anticipation of what will be, and the noticing of what is. These three weave a thread we call my life. Remove the weaver, and time unravels into stillness. It's unsettling to think that the ticking of clocks might be less real than the attention hearing them tick. But it also feels liberating. Because if time flows through consciousness, not the other way around, then every moment, past, future, imagined or real, already exists as ripples on the same quiet surface. And maybe what we call the present isn't a fleeting point between past and future. Maybe it's the entire ocean of awareness, timeless, motionless, endlessly reflecting change while never changing itself. Section 6. The self as a construct. If consciousness is the open space where everything happens, then what exactly is this thing that keeps claiming ownership of it? This I that walks around saying, my thoughts, my life, my story. When I look closely, the self feels less like a solid core and more like a well-rehearsed character, one that updates its script every few seconds. A running commentary that says, this is me, because silence would be too uncomfortable. Psychologists call it the narrative self, a collage of memories, roles and expectations stitched together so convincingly that it seems like one continuous person. Every morning, consciousness wakes up, gathers the fragments of yesterday, and rebuilds the illusion that someone has been here all along. It's a miracle of storytelling, and a bit of a lie, but it's not a malicious lie. The self is useful, it organizes experience, It gives the chaos a center. Without it, you wouldn't remember to feed yourself, finish your degree, or return a friend's call. The self is a map we draw so we don't get lost in the wilderness of awareness. Still, the more I stare at this map, the more I realize it's drawn on water. The person I was 5 years ago, gone. The person I'll be tomorrow, not yet assembled. Every thought of me is an echo of something already past. So who's hearing the echo? When I try to find the one doing the hearing, I only find more echoes, a thought about a thought, a reflection of a reflection. It's like chasing your own shadow in a hall of mirrors. Each time you reach for yourself, you catch another story instead. Buddhist philosophy calls this anatta, the doctrine of no self. Not that nothing exists, but that the self isn't a permanent entity, it's a process, a verb pretending to be a noun. Awareness, moment by moment, constructing a center of gravity that helps it balance. And yet, even if the self is an illusion, it's a strangely necessary one. The body needs a pilot, even if the pilot is a dream. Perhaps evolution didn't give us selves to discover truth. It gave them to help us survive long enough to ask these questions. So maybe the self is like the cursor on a computer screen. It isn't the program, nor the machine. It's just the point where the system interacts with itself. It moves when we move. It disappears when we stop looking. Sometimes, in meditation or pure stillness, the cursor flickers off. The inner dialogue stops, and what's left is awareness without ownership. Not, I am aware, just awareness. When that happens, something paradoxical occurs. The boundary between self and world softens. Experience doesn't belong to anyone anymore, it simply is. And then, inevitably, the cursor returns. The mind starts narrating again, proud of its moment of silence. I experienced awareness. The loop resets. But even if the illusion reappears, a small crack remains. You know now that the narrator isn't the whole story. It's just the story being told. Maybe that's all enlightenment is. Not deleting the self, but seeing through it without needing to destroy it. Living as the map while remembering the ocean underneath. Section 7. Consciousness as fundamental. At some point, after tracing every neural circuit, after chasing every illusion and reflection, a quiet question begins to form. What if consciousness isn't something the universe produces, but something the universe produces everything through? It sounds absurd at first, mystical even, but so did relativity once. The more I think about it, the harder it becomes to locate consciousness inside matter. Every time we point to the brain and say, there it is, we're already using consciousness to look. Awareness precedes every observation. Without it, there isn't even a there to find. Some philosophers and physicists have leaned toward this heretical thought. Spinoza called reality a single substance that thinks and extends. Schrödinger wrote that the total number of minds in the universe is one. The ancient Upanishads said it more simply, that which sees cannot be seen. Panpsychism gives this intuition a modern coat of paint. Consciousness, in some primitive form, might be a basic feature of reality, like mass or charge. Every particle could hold a flicker of experience, and what we call a mind is just what happens when countless flickers synchronize. It's tempting to dismiss that as poetic nonsense, but maybe the real nonsense is assuming that matter, dead and mute, suddenly wakes up when organized in a particular shape. If awareness is an accident, it's the most extraordinary one imaginable, the universe bumping its head and realizing it exists. Still, calling consciousness fundamental doesn't really solve the mystery, it only moves it down a floor. We replace one question, how does matter create mind, with another. Why does fundamental reality express itself as awareness? But at least this inversion shifts the direction of wonder. Instead of trying to build consciousness from matter upward, we start seeing matter as what consciousness looks like when it's viewed from the outside. Imagine two vantage points. From within, experience, from without, physics. The equations describe what awareness does, the sensations describe what awareness feels like. Both views are true, just incomplete on their own, like a melody written in notes versus heard in sound. If that's the case, consciousness isn't something that happens to us, it's what everything is happening in. Galaxies, atoms, thoughts, all waves in the same invisible ocean. we mistake the ripples for the water itself. Of course, this idea is impossible to prove. You can't run an experiment outside consciousness to measure it, but you can notice that every experiment, every measurement, every thought of proof already unfolds inside it. The scientist and the mystic are standing in the same field. They're just looking in opposite directions. Sometimes, late at night, I try to imagine what existence would be without consciousness. A universe still expanding, still glowing, but with no one, not even itself, to know it. The thought collapses on itself instantly. A world without awareness isn't a world. It's a blank definition with no meaning attached. So maybe consciousness isn't in the universe. Maybe the universe is in consciousness. Maybe this endless physical theatre is how awareness dreams itself into form, the infinite pretending to be finite for the sheer joy of seeing what that feels like. And when the pretending ends, when the dream dissolves, nothing is lost. The stage remains, silent, luminous, unknowable, watching itself forever. Section 8. The edge of language. There's a point in thinking where words start to creak under the weight of what they're trying to carry. You can feel it. Every sentence gets close to meaning something profound and then collapses into noise. Talking about consciousness is like trying to pour the ocean into a paper cup. The more you pour, the more it spills over the sides. I used to think I just hadn't found the right vocabulary yet, that there existed some perfect phrase, some precise combination of syllables that could finally point at awareness itself. But language is built for naming things, and consciousness isn't a thing. It's what gives thingness to things. The moment you speak of it, you've already stepped outside of it, like trying to describe sight using touch. Every metaphor betrays the truth a little. The mirror, the ocean, the field, they all help until they don't. At best, they hint. At worst, they trap. Because the moment I say consciousness is something, it's already not that. Wittgenstein ended his Tractatus with the line, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." I think he was pointing right here, to this very boundary. The limit isn't in our intelligence, it's in the medium itself. Awareness can't be contained in the symbols it creates. And yet, silence isn't quite right either. Silence feels like a closing, a retreat, but the edge of language isn't a wall, it's a horizon. You can't cross it with words, but you can walk toward it, and in doing so, you start to notice the light that makes seeing possible. So maybe the point isn't to describe consciousness, but to gesture toward it, the way a finger points to the moon. The finger isn't the moon, but without it, most people wouldn't look up. Every metaphor, every theory, every conversation about awareness, they're all fingers pointing at the same unspeakable thing. And the most honest gesture might just be the simplest one. Quiet attention. The moment you stop trying to define consciousness, you can finally notice it, not as an object, but as the space where noticing itself happens. When I stop speaking, it doesn't disappear. When I stop thinking, it doesn't sleep. It's here, the silent presence that never left. Maybe that's why mystics throughout time end their search, not with explanations, but with laughter, or tears, or stillness. They realize the answer was never hiding behind the right idea, it was in the seeing itself, long before the words arrived. And so we stand at this edge, where thought meets the unspeakable, where maps dissolve into landscapes, where everything we've said becomes a kind of music fading into its own silence. Section 9. A temporary conclusion. So after all this circling, the neurons and illusions, mirrors and loops, time and self, what have we actually learned? Nothing final, and maybe that's the point. Consciousness resists closure the way the horizon resists being reached. Every answer it gives only deepens the question. If you ask me now, what is consciousness? I can only answer with metaphors that immediately contradict each other. It's a stage, a mirror, a field, a dream, a verb, a silence pretending to be sound. All true and none complete. But somewhere along this mental pilgrimage, something subtle shifts. You start to realize that the question itself is the phenomenon. The act of wondering, what am I, is consciousness recognizing itself, like a flame curving back to light its own wick. The mystery isn't a problem to solve, it's an experience to inhabit. Maybe that's why every tradition, from physics to philosophy to mysticism, eventually reaches the same soft boundary, an understanding that understanding itself has limits. And within those limits, something sacred emerges, humility. a quiet reverence for the fact that there is anything at all to be aware of. When I stop trying to label awareness and just rest in it, I notice it has no edges. Thoughts rise and fall, sensations appear and vanish, the body breathes, the world happens, all within the same open presence. Everything I called me and not me were just different ripples on the same water. And maybe that's enough. Maybe consciousness doesn't need a definition to be real. Maybe its refusal to be captured is the evidence that it's fundamental. After all, what could possibly contain the thing that contains everything? So this isn't a conclusion, just a pause, a comma in an endless sentence the universe has been writing since it first learned to look at itself. For now, I'll stop speaking, but the awareness that heard these words won't stop. It will keep listening, as it always has, to the quiet sound of existence thinking itself into being.